Welcome to GURPS Explosions, Completely Explained, where I hope to completely explain explosions in GURPS 4th edition. Let's get started. Some weapons in GURPS explode. The ones that do are marked with an EX at the end of their damage entry, like 2D plus 1 crushing explosive or 3D times 2 burning explosive, and so on. Anything less than 1 yard away from the blast takes the listed damage, and the explosion causes collateral damage out to twice the damage dice number of yards. So, for example, an explosive that deals 6d times 2 damage would deal collateral damage out to 24 yards, twice 6 times 2. The collateral damage that an explosive deals is equal to its listed damage divided by 3 times the yards from the blast. So if an explosive deals 6d times 2 to targets less than 1 yard away, at 6 yards, it would deal 6d times 2 divided by 18. At 12 yards, it would deal the damage divided by 36, all the way out to 24 yards, where it would deal its damage divided by 72. Anyone further than that doesn't take any damage. Only torso armor provides damage reduction from explosions, and explosives that have an armor divisor only apply that divisor to targets less than 1 yard away. The only active defense you can take from an explosion is the dodge and drop maneuver, and all explosives count as incendiary for the purpose of lighting things on fire. Many explosives also deal shrapnel damage. This damage is listed in square brackets after the normal damage, and attacks everything within a number of yards equal to 5 times the fragmentation damage dice. In this example, the fragments would attack everything out to 10 yards. These fragments automatically hit anything less than 1 yard away, but roll to attack everything further with a skill of 15. The explosion's skill is modified by 3 things: the range to the target, the target's posture, and the size modifier of the target. So if an explosion goes off 5 yards away from a target who is crouching and is 4'6", then the fragments would roll against a skill of 15, minus 1 for the range modifier, minus 2 for crouching, minus 1 for size modifier, for a modified total of 11. A target might be struck by multiple fragments. For every 3 points by which the fragment attack succeeds, the target is struck by 1 additional fragment. For example, if the fragments roll against a skill of 15 and get a 7, a margin of success of 8, the target would be struck by 2 additional fragments for a total of 3 fragments. Hit locations should be rolled randomly for each of these fragments. And if the explosive that sent the fragments had an armor divisor, it is not applied to the fragments themselves. Also, fragments always deal cutting damage. Now for some special fragmentation rules. Fragments from airbursts ignore the skill penalty incurred from the target's posture. Explosives that are set in certain environments might cause incidental fragmentation, anywhere from 1d minus 4 damage for loose earth up to a full 1d frag damage for metallic scrap. There are some fragments that are designed to deal burning damage in addition to the cutting damage, like white phosphorus incendiary grenades. These fragments deal 1d burning damage with an armor divisor of 0.2 or armor multiplier of 5 every 10 seconds for 1 minute. Demolition. The demolition rules answer the question, how much explosive do I need to deal a certain amount of damage, and how much damage does a certain amount of explosives deal? So first, damage to pounds of TNT. To deal 6d times n damage, you will need n squared over 4 pounds of TNT. So to deal 6d times 6 damage, you will need 6 squared over 4, or 9 pounds of TNT. But if you don't have TNT, then you just take the pounds of TNT you would need to deal that much damage and divide by your explosive's relative explosive force, or REF. So to deal 6d times 6 damage with diesel, you would need the 9 pounds of TNT equivalent divided by diesel's relative explosive force of 0.5 to get 18 pounds of diesel to deal 6d times 6 explosive damage. Most demolition explosives don't list a damage type, but are typically crushing explosives, although some might be different, like diesel is probably a burning explosive. Pounds of TNT equivalent to damage. Explosives deal 6d times the square root of the pounds of explosive you have times 4 times the explosive's relative explosive force, which is quite an equation for a tabletop role-playing game, so let's go through an example. If you have half a pound of nitroglycerin, it would deal 6d times the square root of half a pound times 4 times nitroglycerin's relative explosive force of 1.5, or 6d times 1.7, rounded to the nearest, would be 6d times 2 damage. Explosions in other environments. In normal atmosphere, you would divide the collateral damage by 3 times the distance in yards to the target. However, in water, or a similarly dense fluid, you would only divide the collateral damage by 1 times the distance, as the thicker fluid transfers the energy more efficiently. In a near vacuum, like space, the only thing carrying the shock wave is the expanding gases themselves, so you divide the damage by 10 times the distance to the target. Someone who jumps on an explosive to save their allies from the blast takes the maximum possible damage from the explosion. For example, if an explosion deals 6d damage, the noble soul would take 36 crushing damage, but would still get to reduce it by their torso DR. Everyone else threatened by the explosion gains extra DR equal to the sacrificer's torso DR plus their maximum HP. And finally, explosions that go off inside of a creature, like from a creature eating it, ignore torso DR and they target the vitals, gaining a 3 times wounding multiplier. And that is GURPS Explosions, completely explained.